To cover Jorden Peterson. Now, I'm not going to say that this dude is responsible for a shit ton of hateful rhetoric online, but this dude is responsible for a lot of hate rhetoric online. Now, I do want to go ahead and point out that he started an all-meat diet, which just seems like it's missing a lot of essential nutrients, and then ended up going into a coma during treatment because he was also addicted to his medications. Dude's not in a good state. He's not. But then what happens when you have somebody who's not in a good state and you just get him on for an interview? When they're definitely not camera ready, but they're still going to be on anyway. Let's take a listen.
I suspect if you did the statistics properly, I suspect that medicine, independent of public health, kills more people than it saves.
So, granted, from Jorden Peterson's perspective, remember, the dude has been addicted to medicine. And there is an argument for how bad it is to have certain, like, let's take, Oxycontin as an example. There is an argument for how negatively stuff like that can affect someone, how much it can destroy somebody's lives, how much having, hardcore painkillers or anxiety medications or stuff like that can cause damage on their own over and above anything that they might actually try to help treat. All of that's fair. But I don't think you're going to find that when you, quote, do the statistics properly, that modern medicine hurts more than it helps. Because now you're having to weigh all modern medicine at this point. Like, the opioid crisis is a thing. That is an issue, yes. But the presence of modern medication, I don't think there's actually an argument for that hurting more as a net. Like a net harm over and above what it helps. That seems pulled right out the ass. Now, granted, it does seem like he admits that, at least at this point.
I suspect if you factor in phenomena like the development of superbugs in hospitals, for example, that overall the net consequence of hospitals is negative.
Now it's not just modern medicine. Now it's hospitals. Hospitals. Jorden, hospitals. Your argument is going to be that hospitals are a net negative. Should people just die in their own homes? Is that a thing that people should do? Also, the development of superbugs are not because of the existence of hospitals, Jorden. The development of superbugs is because we have conditions like the overuse of antibiotics, for instance, and we have not spent as much time developing the technology required to deal with the things that antibiotics are meant to deal with without the antibiotics. Yes, superbugs become more resistant to antibiotics. And so you end up having to have things like bacteriophages. Because phages are perfectly fine killing the same things that antibiotics kill. And uniquely, the evolutionary track that a bug has to take to develop a resistance to being killed by bacteriophages also makes them weaker to antibiotics. They're so far, it does not seem like they can develop a resistance to both phages destroying them and also antibiotics at the same time. They lose one when they develop the other. It is a failure, not of hospitals existing, Jorden, but a failure of modern medicine not keeping up with the consequences of its existence. Because there's always going to be a trade-off. Like acetaminophen, for example. is a wonderful medication that helps with tooth pain, for instance, something that I've been dealing with a lot lately. However, overuse of acetaminophen can in fact lead to liver damage. This is why other types of painkillers, especially topical painkillers, should be used in conjunction with them to lower the amount of reliance on something like acetaminophen, because that lowers the overall negative effects of it. That's not something precluded on the existence of hospitals. That's just how the side effects of medicines work. And, like I said, we can find ways to counteract those side effects, Jordan. But dude wants to sit here and say that hospitals existing create superbugs.
Now that's just a guess, and
I'm glad he at least admits it's a guess.
And it could easily be wrong, but it also could not be wrong. And
yes, that is how probabilities work, Jordan. That is exactly how they work. It's not a gotcha.
That is a good example, that's where my thinking about what we don't know has taken me with regards to the critique of what we do.
The fact that it's even plausible is a stunning
Well, medical error is the third leading cause of death.
Yep.
And that doesn't take into account the generation of superbugs, for example.
So, hold on. Jordan wants to sit here and talk about doing statistics properly. If somebody is going to die from a disease, and then medical error is involved in their death when they could have otherwise been saved, without the existence of the hospital, they would have just died. This is not the case for all cases, but for somebody who wants to talk about doing the statistics properly, you seem to be deliberately ignoring potential data here. Which doesn't help you, Jordan. And then his interviewer is just sitting there like, the fact that it's even plausible is stunning. The fact that something is plausible is not stunning. This is the same type of argument that causes people to go, the universe is very, very unlikely, therefore, God. Because I can't conceive of improbable things happening all the time. Meanwhile, they would like to go to the casino, play the lottery, or also play a card game. All of which involve incredibly high unlikeliness of probability. But go on, Jordan. Tell us about how hospitals are destroying the world. Let's go.
The generation of superbugs, or, if you're thinking broadly about it, I don't know where you stand on this issue, but I have been tracking the lab leak hypothesis for COVID, and it is very distressing to me that as much as it's an unsettled question, the evidence for the lab leak gets stronger over time.
Does it, though? Does the evidence for the lab leak get stronger over time? Let's go ahead and take a look at what Nature has to say about this. Let's take a look. COVID's origins and the lab leak theory. Yes, we'll accept all cookies. Where did the SARS-CoV-2 virus come from? As a team of researchers from the WHO prepares to report on the investigation into the origins of the virus, we discuss the leading theories, including the controversial lab leak. Although there is no evidence to support it, the lab leak idea remains popular among certain groups. Similar hypotheses were even touted about the Ebola outbreak in Sierra Leone. We discuss why theories like this seem to gain traction. Now, we're not going to go into the entirety of this audio, but I do want to point out that Nature, which is one of the leading scientific journals, though this is not itself, right here, this page, this is not a scientific journal entry, but this is an entry on Nature that is one of the leading scientific journals. And it is recent. This is March 5th, 2021, on their podcast, pointing out how the evidence is not in favor of the lab leak theory. The lab leak theory has been a thing for a year now with COVID, and yet that evidence is supposed to get stronger and stronger every day, but then when you go to an actual accredited scientific journal and look about the lab leak theory, even it's saying, no, this is bullshit. Conspiracy theories are convenient. That's what they are. I've said it 1,000 times. I will say it again. The mark of a good conspiracy theory is that it hits you with a compelling question, not a factual answer. The compelling question with this theory is it possible that this was made in a lab? And yes, it's possible. Just like millions of other incongruent things are possible. And people will cling onto that possibility, just like he clinged onto the fact that this is even plausible, is completely and totally stunning. No, it's not. The fact that something is possible, the fact that something is plausible does not make it stunning. It just puts it in a particular category.
All of the competing hypotheses fall one by one and are replaced by some alternative that hasn't yet been falsified. But that's very ominous to me.
Have you ever considered the fact that if you have a hypothesis with a null hypothesis, you have a proposition with a null hypothesis. Proposition is the lab leak. What's the null hypothesis for the lab leak? I want you in the comment section of this video to do me a huge favor. One, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do so already. But two, after hitting the like button, after going down there, I want you to tell me what the null hypothesis is for the lab leak theory. Because I think one of my problems with that theory, over and above anything, is that any single time that I've heard the lab leak theory presented to me by a conspiracy theorist, they have never given a proper null hypothesis. Now, what is a null hypothesis? A null hypothesis is basically, these are the criteria that need to be met for this to be proven wrong. If you meet these criteria, this is gone. This is not a possibility. And aside from the fact that all of the genetic markers that would need to be in the virus for it to be a lab leak, those have not seemed to have come out, I want to know what your position is still. What's the null hypothesis for this? Because they're certainly not going to fucking present it here. It's a possibility. And that's all it ever needs to be. Compelling questions are always better than accurate answers.
To me. And if this is the case, if this was a bug that was modified in the lab through gain-of-function research and escaped, then you have to add that to the balance sheet with respect to the costs of medical errors, because it looks like, if this was an escapee from the Wuhan lab, that it was an escapee from experiments designed to create a vaccine to protect us from future coronaviruses. So we can't say that with specificity, but if we look at the circumstantial evidence of what was being studied, how it was being studied, and what the likely purpose of those investigations were, then this is, the mother of all self-inflicted wounds, and it is downstream of naive thinking about the cost-benefit ratio of enhancing the infectivity of viruses.
Except that doesn't seem to be the case here. Again, we don't have a lot of evidence that this is something from a lab leak. Moreover, the category that you're working with is about hospitals. You're dealing with hospitals being responsible for more of these things. And these categories keep jumping. You see, first it's modern medicine. It sounds like we're talking about pills, and that's why I brought up the opioid epidemic. Because, yeah, there is argument there that modern medicine has led to an over-reliance on drugs. There's an over-prescription problem. And this has led to people being addicted to prescription drugs. Yeah, cool. I agree with you. But then when you move it from that to, oh no, modern hospitals are the problem. And then you move from modern hospitals, at least when it moved this time, it moved from Jorden Peterson to another speaker. This was created in a research lab. Therefore, let's go ahead and continue to have issues with modern medicine. This is the kind of thinking that leads to people doing a myriad of things. One of the big ones is arguing against having publicly funded healthcare. Because why would somebody who believes that public healthcare as it exists right now, is causing more problems than it's helping, why would somebody want their tax dollars to go to that? My argument would be that they probably wouldn't want that. Which is going to create more people who don't want to fund public healthcare because they don't want to fund healthcare at all, because to them, healthcare is some type of big scam that is just hurting people. And on top of that, on top of the healthcare issue where that's concerned, even if they have health care, the likelihood that you're going to increase the amount of people who are, say, anti-vaxxers, because even in a world where they have health care, they don't want to utilize it, they don't want to engage with it, because they're worried that they're going to catch the autisms from a vaccine. This is the same kind of rhetoric and the same kind of thinking that leads there. And all of this from an interviewer who is trying to grab a person who apparently lives his life in 15-second increments while trying to tell the entire world what their 12 rules for life should be. Jorden Peterson and his interviewer here probably have a very bad case of brainworms. And I'm going to be honest, it doesn't surprise me how we have a higher proclivity for people to agree with conspiracy theories and become anti-vaxxers and stuff like that, because people like this end up being the people that they're listening to. And I think that's just incredibly harmful, personally. What do you think? I've already asked you what the null hypothesis would be when you're in the comment section below. Let me know what you thought of the video in the comment section below. Go ahead and hit the like button if you haven't already, and go ahead and subscribe if you haven't already. If you want to support my channel and what I do, please consider checking me out on Patreon. Links to that are going to be in the description. And as always, everyone, that's another video tagline.